Okay, one more topic I want to hit today, and I mentioned at the start of the show. There's a lot in the news about Lieutenant General Michael Flynn and whether he might actually be freed in the relatively near future. I want to just quickly explain what's happened with that. We had his attorney, Sidney Powell, on the show. I think that was last week. So if you are listening to this, especially a first-time listener, you can go to our YouTube page, America Can We Talk, or under my name, Debbie Georgatos, or America Can We Talk on YouTube, and you can easily find the interview. It was a great interview. She's a stellar lawyer. She was talking about where we are in the Flynn case, and then she was also talking about her new book, which is a great book. But the news about Lieutenant General Michael Flynn this week is that Attorney General Barr, the big hassle with Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, he pled guilty into a charge in early 2017, and it has since appeared that he was being manipulated by the FBI, and was misled about a variety of things, and that he's wanted at this point to try to withdraw his guilty plea. The FBI, the DOJ, has behaved horribly in this case. There was evidence that when he was interviewed, when the FBI first sent people over, when he had his brief stint as national security advisor with President Trump, the FBI sent people over to interview him. He, spoke forthrightly, answered their questions, and one of the people who was there was making notes. One of the FBI agents interrogating him, and by the way, they didn't tell him he was a subject, which is all by itself not permissible policy conduct by the FBI, but he thought it was a friendly interview. He's working for the Trump administration. This is the Trump FBI, friendly, trying to be helpful interview. But the FBI agent, one of them who was there questioning him, wrote in the notes afterwards that they perceived that the way what Lieutenant General Michael Flynn was saying was true. They perceived him as honest and giving honest answers. So case rolls forward. I mean, there are all sorts of iterations we can't get into today. You can actually, if you go back on my website, americacanwetalk.org, my Facebook page takes a long time to scroll down there, but the YouTube channel, you find other interviews I've done of Sidney Powell. She's explained all the legal intricacies. But the big news of today is that the Attorney General Barr brought in a U.S. attorney, an outside U.S. attorney from Missouri, into the Department of Justice to look over the information, the documents available inside the FBI that the Sidney Powell, Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, are wanting access to, what Attorney General Barr is trying to do is figure out whether the people who worked on Lieutenant General Michael Flynn prosecution, the FBI who investigated him, did they behave properly and in accordance with law? Are they turning over all information that are required by the Brady Rule to turn over in this ongoing prosecution of Lieutenant General Michael Flynn? So Barr brought in an outsider, a U.S. attorney named Timothy Shea from the Eastern District of Missouri. Timothy Shea went over what the FBI has and apparently withheld from previous document requests, did not turn over to Lieutenant General Michael Flynn's attorney, Sidney Powell. And this guy actually apparently willing to follow this standard in law. And the Brady Rule is very broad. If you're being prosecuted, the Brady Rule says the government has to turn everything over to you that could possibly be exculpatory, that could help in your defense, that could help reduce your sentence or impact the sentence. It's very broad. And God bless Sidney Powell being smart enough to recognize they're holding things back. They're not turning things over. She is tenacious. She's brilliant. She is unrelenting. And she kept saying they're not turning things over. So finally, Barr brought in this guy, this U.S. attorney, Eastern District of Missouri, Timothy Shea. Lo and behold, this past Friday, a new filing was made by the DOJ, returning in new documents, turning over new documents to the court and to Sidney Powell and they were sealed. The documents were turned over, but they were sealed. And it appears, based on how Sidney Powell at least sees this, Sidney Powell sees this as she has now evidence that the Brady rule was violated, that the prosecutors did not turn over everything they were obligated to turn over. In fact, a new player in this whole, I mean, I've heard his name before, but unless you're completely nerdy about this whole episode with Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, you might not know the guy's name, but now there's another person who's apparently going to be added to the list of people to watch closely, who was probably a significant wrongdoer. Adding to the list of Comey, Brennan, McCabe, Strzok, Page, Rosenstein is Dana Buente. And Dana Buente was apparently the attorney that was overseeing and was a part of the urging the FBI not to turn over documents that they really had an obligation to turn over. And so Sidney Powell's tweet, breaking, this is her tweet, I love her. The government just provided the Flynn defense with remarkable new and long withheld Brady evidence. Letter below just filed. Stay tuned. Real Donald Trump. Then she goes on listing other people she's had copying on her tweet. But the letter from the attorney, from U.S. Attorney Timothy Shea, said to Sidney Powell and to the another attorney, Dear Counsel, beginning in January 2020 at the direction of Attorney General Barr, the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Missouri has been conducting a review of the Michael Flynn investigation. The review by this attorney has involved the analysis of reports related to the investigation, along with communications and notes by Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI personnel associated with the investigation. The enclosed documents were obtained and analyzed in March and April of this year and are provided to you as a result of this ongoing review. Additional documents may be forthcoming. So this guy, the outsider who wasn't part of the whole Comey, et cetera, cabal, wasn't part of the DOJ FBI effort to get Trump and to get Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, a person who understands the law and what the requirements of the Brady rule are, reviewing documents, turned over we don't know what they were, but an undisclosed set of documents turned over last Friday, now in the hands of Sidney Powell, the very capable Sidney Powell, who I'm sure is going to make the most of them. So, in fact, she is using the expression, she claims her client was framed and has evidence to prove it. This is what Sidney Powell has been saying. And there's actually talk that maybe the entire case is going to be dropped as early as this week. So, in fact, Sidney Powell is claiming that her client was set up, and the exculpatory evidence now received from the FBI is going to help her show that. So, big news, especially, it's amazing. You know, I do this show every day or 4 days a week, and in the past, whatever it is, 5-6 weeks, it seems like all we can talk about is the coronavirus. But let me go back and remind you, as I'm closing up the show today, remind you how significant the prosecution of Lieutenant General Michael Flynn was, how consequential the government's conduct in the way it chose to go after candidate Trump in 2016, the way it chose to use and abuse the FISA court process with the mission and intention of misrepresenting facts to the FISA court to get search warrants issued so they could spy on a political enemy. This is under the Obama administration, the Democrat infiltrated FBI DOJ using that process of FISA to get after a political opponent. This is lower than low. This has no place. It could never belong in the justice system in this country. We've had years of lies and stagnation. We had the Mueller investigation ongoing and, digging under every, lifting up every rock, digging under every place they could, every person they could talk to, every document they could find, and document requests and interrogations and depositions, and came up with nothing. They actually, because of their conduct, prove what Trump was saying all along. This is a witch hunt. I had no collusion with the Russians. I'll tell you one more thing before I go to our closing out for today. There was a story recently. I'm going to dig in more before I lay it all out for you. But there's now evidence that John Brennan, who appears to be the mastermind. I mean, people of this whole Trump-Russia collusion farce, this hoax, this story they made up in Washington in order to try to destroy President Trump or candidate Trump and then President Trump. But there's a story talking out there about the idea that John Brennan, the apparent mastermind, was key in suppressing information, keeping it from becoming available, that showed that the Russians in 2016 were not trying to help Trump win. They were trying to help Hillary win. And those of you who are long-term listeners to my show know I have said this from the beginning for years. If you are the Russians and you're, past communism, but not really, and you have a very government-controlled society, you're socialist, you're left-wingers, you want an ally in the White House who's a left-winger too, which would have been Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton never presented a threat to the Russian, to Putin at all. She was a joke as Secretary of State. They saw her as someone they could control and manipulate. Of course, the Russians hoped Hillary was going to win. Of course, the Russians did not want to have a guy like Donald Trump, who is pro-America, America first, strong on America, and in their view, fairly unpredictable, which is one of his traits we love about him. But I'm going to dig in this story more, but I want to plant that seed and talk about it again, how important that is to recognize, because if John Brennan, actually, who was the head of the CIA at the time, if he knew that the Russians were really manipulating things to be sure that Hillary won, which appears, and he was hiding evidence, blocking the release of evidence that showed that the Russians were supporting Hillary, and instead let this whole massive lie of a hoax of investigation into the non-existent Trump-Russia collusion go forward, he was willing to, he knew from the start, not just that he cooked the whole thing up, he knew, it seems, that the Russians were behind Hillary, that they didn't even want Trump. They would not have been trying to help Trump. They would not have been doing anything to help Trump, and Trump wouldn't have been turning to them for help either. This is another big revelation in what Attorney General Barr has called the single biggest scandal in American history. We might be in the middle of dealing with the coronavirus and the devastation to our economy, and we have to get through this. But we cannot lose sight of the profound significance of the story of what happened inside the FBI and DOJ and CIA 2015, 2016, and ongoing in order to destroy the duly elected president of the United States.